Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael, and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was created in the AITAH subreddit by a user named OK Principles. The post is titled AITAH for prioritizing my nephew and niece over my own children after they hid their mom's affair from her for years. I, 57M, was married to my wife for almost 25 years, and we divorced 4 years ago after I found out about her infidelity. She had an affair partner for almost 5 years. She is now with her affair partner. The whole process hurt me a lot because everything I did in life, I did it for my wife and kids, and to now find that out about my wife, it just hurt me. My two children, 29F and 26M, had known about the affair for years and they had hidden it from me. They both felt very guilty about it, and I don't blame them because they didn't want to break up their family. My daughter even cried a lot and apologized many times, but I told her it was alright. They had their own lives now and I didn't want this eating them up, so I told them to let go of the guilt. However, ever since I found out that they had hidden the affair from me, I lost a lot of love for them. I wasn't going to cut them out of my inheritance or will or anything like that, but emotionally I couldn't connect with them at all. I also have a niece, 30F, and nephew, 28M, who I have been very close with, especially since their father passed away at a really young age. I played a father-like role during their young years because losing her husband at such a young age was very tough for my sister. Over the last 4 years, I've also been looking forward to spending more time with them. Both my niece and nephew have children and they have invited me over for their children's birthdays. They have also invited me over for their own birthdays on Father's Day and on holidays. Overall, we are a very tight-knit, multi-generational family, and I am very proud to be a grandpa to their children, and we are already developing a bond. However, in doing so, I have also lost all interest in connecting with my own children. My daughter has 2 children, while my son has his first child on the way. They have invited me over multiple times, but I have told them I'm busy. I rarely go over, if at all, and I've missed almost all of their children's special occasions. I'm not really interested in being a grandpa to their children. Monetarily, sure, I have been sending them gifts, but I just don't feel like seeing them at all. My daughter especially seems very hurt by it at times, but I hope she understands the reason for this. User A Dumb Karen said, "You're absolutely right. Also, I'm curious if his children maintain a relationship with their mother and her former AP/current partner, and if they would be present for the same events. If so, it would be a major salt in the wound for OP to attend." User Shay2202 said, "NTA for prioritizing your niece and nephew, but you do need to be honest with your children and tell them that they lost your trust when they didn't tell you about their mother's affair. Telling them not to feel guilty about it was obviously a kindness from you to make them feel better, but you should have also told them that even though you don't want them to suffer from guilt, you also don't trust them." User Sarcastic Parent said, "It's more than that though. They caused irreparable damage to their relationship, and he has forgiven, but he can't forget and pretend they are cool. If he tells them he has lost trust, they may try to work on it and increase their contact. If he explains that he understands why they did what they did and that he forgives them, but he is not able to forget, maybe they will see this is a direct consequence of their actions. The shame is, it isn't OP's grandkids' fault, and now his ex-wife has taken away his marriage, kids, and grandkids from him, which is so sad." User OK Leader 7624 said, "This is how damaging affairs can be. You're not just messing up your life or your relationship with your spouse. You hurt everyone in the nuclear family and cause splash damage beyond. OP, this was all your wife's doing. She's the one who cheated. She's the one who put your children in a position to hide what they discovered in the first place. She's the one who continued with her AP instead of stopping right then and there. They knew it was wrong of their mother, but talk about being between a rock and a hard place. Do we tell dad and break his heart? Break up his marriage to our mother, who will be devastated too? Uproot our whole lives because we told? Are we now to blame because we didn't want to ruin a whole marriage and family dynamic? Or do we hope to God this all goes away and this family can get back to normal? Your children are your responsibility to protect, not the other way around. Your wife forced that upon them. Doing so ruined your relationship with her and with them. You would do yourself a great service to go to counseling. It's just too much to bear alone. Good luck, OP. I truly hope you think about and repair your relationship. They're just as much victims as you are." In an update, OP said, "Thank you all for the advice. The one thing I got most from the comments was that my children deserve to know the truth and to not be left in limbo like it was for years. And that's what I just did. I just got off a video call with my daughter and my son. The call was pretty rough and extremely emotional, but I got everything off my chest. I told them that while I had forgiven them, I could never forget it, and that for my mental health, it was better we limit our interactions. I told them not to feel guilty about anything, but that also, after dedicating more than half my life to my wife and children, it was time I put myself first. I told them my heart wasn't in it to be a grandparent to their children. I was also honest with them and told them my heart was only in it for my nephews and nieces' kids. And whenever I did go to their house, I felt joy, while for my own children, I felt nothing. My children probably already knew it, but I wanted them to hear it from me directly. It was really hard to get it off my chest and say it directly to my children's faces. I told them they were still welcome to come to my house anytime, and call me anytime they needed help. Both my children took the call really hard, but I think my daughter took it worst. Those were really ugly tears, and I felt really bad about it. But I do feel a sense of relief, and I have pretty much told all of my feelings to my children and did not keep anything secret. I can now move forward with my life, and so can my children. User Brief Shining Moment said, the comment that mentioned the ripple effect of the impact of infidelity was spot on. The stats for kids of cheaters are bleak, especially for kids who were forced into the middle of an affair by keeping the secret and ultimately absorbing some of the responsibility for their mother's destruction of their family. Sadly, the grandkids are completely innocent, and now they won't have a relationship with their grandfather because he has been traumatized. And yet the cheating mother and her affair partner get to play family with the grandkids after 5 years of playing cheater ball behind OP's back. It's unfair at every angle, and it's really depressing to see the generational impact. User Fries with Shake Booty said, interesting that the comments to this OP are so much kinder when his kids were younger than the other set that hid things from their dad. It sucks to be the kids, but parents are still people. They don't have to shut off their feelings, not for something of this magnitude. Under this comment, user Addy Murky 1021 said, they were 25 and 21 when OP found out. They knew for years. They did this to themselves. User Beauty Choice said, obviously OP needs to focus on his needs. However, he also needs to keep in mind that his children should and hopefully will be putting their own children's needs and well-being first. So if OP keeps his distance from his children and grandchildren and wants to be in their lives several years later, his children will be considering the effects of welcoming OP into their own children's lives. What I mean by that is his children will need to consider if OP is going to be a stable part of their children's lives. So maybe a slower and more controlled integration of OP into their lives and not a sudden complete integration. That way, if OP decides this is too much for him and or he wants to take a step back and work on himself more, or if he goes back to prioritizing his nibblings children, then there is minimal damage and effects to the grandchildren's lives. User Swimming Company 706 said, I fundamentally don't agree with holding this grudge over the children for the parents' actions. Mom put those kids in the worst position ever. Dad needs therapy because he hasn't forgiven them. Not really. Sure, if he doesn't want to forgive them, he can keep being emotionally constipated, but the shutting down and not feeling thing is a response your body has to not properly dealing with the emotions. Therapy. This next story was made in the AITAH subreddit by a throwaway account. The post is titled AITAH for telling my now ex GF that her manic episode was no excuse for her cheating. I, 25M, dated my now ex GF, 25F, for 2 years. For the most part, things were going great. Although there were issues with her sometimes, usually with fits of anger, it wasn't too bad. Well, all that came crashing to an end when my GF had what was a manic episode. After drinking copious amounts of alcohol on a night out, she had a severe manic episode where she spent $10K, cheated on me by sleeping with a random stranger, and then sending incomprehensible audio messages to me. She was checked into a mental health facility after that episode and diagnosed with BPD. She had long suspected she maybe had this, but it had never manifested so intensely. The psychiatrist said she had undergone psychosis, severe mania, and had BPD. Since then, she was placed on meds and undergoes talking therapy. Shortly after, she confessed to me she had cheated and was extremely remorseful, saying she'd never do anything like that. I was shocked by her admission and had to hide my tears. I basically stormed out and went to a hotel by myself for a few days. I then plucked up the courage to confront her. She tried telling me she loves me and that she has a lot of regret for what she did and that she feels immense shame and that it's because of her sickness. I told her that her mental health issues are not an excuse, that it has nothing to do with that, and that she cheated because that's just who she is. I then told her we are finished. She began sobbing uncontrollably, saying she wants to end her life. That really hurt me, but I stood firm. I told her that her cheating is her own fault, and it's a reflection of who she is, and that she needs to stop hiding behind her mental issues. Her friends have been messaging me calling me an asshole and heartless, but I feel they are the ones being heartless. User Mr. 435 said ex-wife had an episode after first child. Things resolved. 13 years free of major manic episodes, then it came back in regular cycles. Cycled for another 12 years. Had an affair, asked for a divorce and granted. Married the guy, saved on alimony. If she doesn't take her meds regularly, then bail out. User Straw Hat Cabin Boy said NTA. My sister had BPD and bipolar, and they ultimately led to her death at 24 years old. One time, she drank too much at an airport and went manic, and it took 7 airport cops to take down this 5'5" girl. It is a very serious diagnosis. As someone who lived with someone with this mental illness for almost my whole life, and saw how her relationships and friendships went, I understand you, but her mental illness has everything to do with this. That said, you have zero obligation to stay. BPD is insanely hard to deal with and things can get very toxic out of nowhere. You can leave and be totally justified, but don't do it with hate in your heart. She is legitimately mentally ill with something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Whenever my sister's BPD pushed me over the edge, my dad would always say, her brain is constantly, inescapably attacking her. If you think it is hard to deal with her, imagine how hard it is to be her. Have some empathy, but if you cannot handle an SO with BPD, which most normal people cannot and is not your fault, you are in the right to leave before one or both of you get hurt, and physical hurt is on the table with this diagnosis. Under this comment, a user named AI Kid Harm said, as someone with BPD, this was an incredibly articulate and insightful comment. Dating someone with BPD who is either not being treated for it or is in the beginning stages of treatment is insanely difficult, often unsustainable, and sometimes traumatic. Treatment is critical to remission. It does not get better without it. It's not something you can weather. User Hyacinth Madeline said, while it's essential to be compassionate towards those with mental health issues, personal boundaries and self-respect are also crucial for your own well-being. It's unfair to demand that someone overlooks infidelity under the guise of it being caused by a manic episode. Mental illness isn't an excuse for hurting others. NTA for breaking up in response to a breach of trust, but some sensitivity could be shown when considering her mental state. Regardless, you're not obligated to stay in a relationship that jeopardizes your peace of mind. A few days later, OP provided an update, so comments were quite evenly split. Many saying I was NTA, but also many saying I was completely misinformed on mental health. Admittedly, I think I was perhaps a bit ignorant on mental health and how her psychotic and manic episode affected her state. I really contemplated it. My ex has been spamming my messages and begging to talk to me so she can explain. I thought about it, and the truth is that while I have a more objective understanding of how her mental health led her to do what she did, I simply am not feeling empathy for her. My concern right now is to take care of myself, so I have blocked her on everything and also all her friends. I think this is the best path forward rather than talking it out with her, as that could go badly for both of us. User Certain Accident 3382 said, yeah, mania is a bitch and not the happy sunshine rainbow shitting unicorns that Hollywood portrays, but you absolutely need to take care of yourself first. The consequences of her actions are something she has to live with even after a manic episode. If we're lucky, it gives her reason to more openly and honestly talk with her doctor and seek the right therapies and medications that will work best for her to minimize episodes instead of just slapping a band-aid on it. Under this comment, OP said, thank you. I am taking care of myself and reminding myself that her cheating is her own behavior. Hopefully, when I am well enough to date again, I will date someone who isn't suffering from a severe mental health disorder. User Single Conclusion 53 said, my ex-wife had mental health issues that came from incestuous abuse as a child. The abuser was her older sister. It resulted in very inappropriate behavior, not conducive to a good married life with me. Over a number of years, she refused to seek help and the behavior continued, so I left her. I was still madly in love with her when I told her it was over, but I wasn't going to live the only life I had with the pain she was causing between us. I eventually met another person who became the love of my life, and life has been amazing ever since. Do not resign yourself to a life of suffering and pain simply because of love. User IDNK said, someone with true mania isn't making rational decisions. Someone who would otherwise not be a cheater absolutely could end up in a situation where they end up doing something like cheating. Some people, even with good treatment, still have manic episodes. Some people don't take their mental health seriously and invite episodes by not engaging in therapy, taking medication, and being aware of slipping. Regardless of intentional or unintentional, cheating can be a deal breaker regardless of the cause. Someone having manic episodes and cheating is liable to cheat again if they have another manic episode, and that lack of trust in a partner can end a relationship. This next story was made in the same subreddit by user TruthInfinite8073. The post is titled AITAH for wanting to leave my fiance due to her abusive family. I've been dating my fiance for 4 years and have been engaged for 7 months. We are trying to plan out a wedding for roughly fall next year. Her childhood was terrible and abusive, to put it mildly. Her parents were raging narcissists and she was the scapegoat for her 2 brothers. She was abused and thrown out the moment she turned 18. She was, however, a great student and hard worker, so with some scholarships and a part-time job, she has a great career and is pretty independent. The problem is, though, that she still has contact with her family. None of them have changed. Well, actually, something has changed. They have become more financially dependent on her. They enjoy slowly creeping back into her life and emotionally blackmailing her for support or whatever she can do. They're not pleasant about it either. They're rude, smug, and generally enjoy being a nuisance. And my fiance can't say no, no matter the horrible things they say or how they outright try to intimidate her openly. I've always known her family history and have always supported her through the issues with them, but in the last year or so, they've become far more brazen and asinine. They come over to our house more often, they make messes all around the place. Her mother acts like she's the stepmother from Cinderella. Her dad drinks all my beer and empties out half the fridge. Her brothers stop by occasionally to act as mouthpieces for their parents. They practically trash the place and leave us to clean the mess. And where is my fiancé in all this? Quietly standing in the corner, practically shaking. I'm no fool here, there is legitimate trauma. There's her need to feel loved by them and her hoping they will appreciate her. Before one of you noble commenters states the obvious, she's been in therapy for this for years. I've tried to establish boundaries. For nearly 2 years, I've been trying to push these ass clowns away. But this is her house she purchased, and no matter of contributions, financial or otherwise, will she let me have a say on who comes into her house. She's been beaten down mentally and emotionally by them for so long. She has told me recently that she wants to earn their approval, how they were right about her, how she needs to be better for them. I've had too many emotional conversations with tears and begging to count, hoping she will take the steps to get better. But she's an adult. I can't force her to do anything. I love her, but I can't help but feel so resentful of what she's doing. It's agonizing watching someone you love, someone who you know deserves so much better, openly destroy themselves for people like her family. It's been painful watching her cry herself to sleep one too many nights because of them. I've tried too many times to help her get out of their clutches, but I have to think of the future. What happens when we have kids? What happens when she is postpartum and invites them over? What happens if there is a medical emergency for either of us? What if our finances get tight and they still demand money? This is the in-law family from hell and I won't be able to avoid them. Tomorrow I'm going to tell her how I want to delay the wedding until firm boundaries are established. If she resents it, I walk. I can't do it anymore. I refuse to watch a slow death like this any further. Update. Talked to her and it went about as well as one could possibly expect. Currently getting myself set up in a hotel for a few days and working on possible long-term plans for moving out. Still a lot going on right now, but maybe sometime next week I'll be able to put everything together into one update. User KM Flushing said NTA. You can't save her if she doesn't want to be saved. Even if she wants to, you'd only be able to help and support. She needs to be the one to enforce the boundaries and hold them, but she doesn't. It's up to you if you want this for life. Have you spoken to her about where you are, that you're on the verge of breaking up with her due to this lack of boundaries? No, it's not to manipulate her into choosing you, although some will say that. It's just a statement of fact. She may be willing to sacrifice everything for her family, but you are not. If this is the life you have to look forward to, you don't want it. You need to put yourself and your needs first. Who knows, it may prompt her to open her eyes and put herself first with her family, but likely not. About 1 week later, OP provided an update. The night after I made the first post, I had decided that I was going to have a heart-to-heart with my fiancée about her family. However, she came back from work early the next day and I was already off that day, so I initiated the talk a little sooner than I planned. Essentially, I told her how this arrangement was not sustainable. I did not feel comfortable marrying her due to how much involvement her family has in her life, and I certainly did not feel comfortable bringing a child into this world with them. I didn't want to tell her cold turkey, no contact with them, but strict limitations to start with on them coming over and what they can do around the house. I also requested couples therapy before marriage. She wasn't happy. She was just staring angrily at me while I spoke, then started yelling at me when I finished. She told me I don't understand their dynamic and it worked for her. I told her that they're abusive users who will bleed her dry and I have never seen them show any decency to her. She told me she just had to work harder for them to appreciate her. I basically yelled at her that a parent's child shouldn't have to beg and plead and work for them to be loved. I finally told her that she sets limits with them or I walk. She was livid, and since I was living in her house, I was kicked out. So the past few days, I have been staying in a hotel and have had my stuff taken out and put into storage. And frankly, it's been great. I am going to stay with family for a few weeks around mid-July, and after that, I am going to go house searching for myself. I have spent the last couple of days relaxing, catching up on movies and video games I haven't had time for, and could go back from work to a quiet room without her family tearing the place apart. Yesterday, however, things came to a head. We have basically been no contact since she booted me out, but I know every Saturday her family loves to spend the afternoon over and she uses me as a shield from their abuse. However, in a very petty move, I simply kept my phone muted all day and played Disco Elysium. I knew she would call back for help with her family, and at this point, pure resentment was kicking in for her, and I wanted nothing to do with her issues. By the end of the night, she had sent me over a dozen texts, and finally 2 frantic voicemails begging me to come home. I decided to come over to check up on her. Long story short, she was sobbing in the living room, and when I came to talk to her, she was practically crushing my back, hugging me and sobbing. I gave her time to cool off and asked what happened. Long story short, her parents and brother came by to get money from her and say horrible shit to her. She wanted to have me come over to help, but I was ignoring her, and when she tried to have one of her friends help out, and everyone basically said, "F that," it all started clicking in for her. She kicked her family out, but not before they said some utterly vile shit to her I won't repeat. She kept apologizing to me and told me over and over to come home. I told her plainly that I had started to build up heavy resentment towards her for some time, and while I loved her and understand it was trauma and not her being outright abusive, there were major issues that would need to be addressed if we were to move forward. She sells the house and moves. We make roughly the same amount of money and we will buy a house together. I am a grown-ass man and I will not live in a house I have no equal agency over. Her family will never step foot in it. They will never come over. They will be treated by me in a very threatening manner if they try and come in. She gets a new therapist and we start premarital counseling. She never makes me interact with her family. We will go LC with her family right now, but make no mistake, we are working towards full NC on her end. I told her I love her, we have been together for a while now and have beautiful memories together, and I know she is suffering from abuse, but these are non-negotiable, and if she has a problem with any of them, then we have to go our separate ways. She told me she's realized for a while now that her family is toxic and unhealthy and she wants to make changes. She has accepted, but some of these will take a while to see through. For now, I am going to stay in the hotel until I head back to stay with my family. She is welcome to come over, but I have made it clear her house is not somewhere I want to go. She and I are both off tomorrow, so we will spend the day here and maybe go out. This is obviously not over yet, but I might not post anything else until mid-August or so. 5 days later, we got another update. Despite all intentions of not updating until much later, with the hopes of an improved relationship with my fiancé and her establishing boundaries with her toxic family, we are now broken up. Essentially, what happened was after last weekend, where I left her for the time to deal with them herself, she seemed to finally grasp the situation and was open to changes, including boundaries and a possible move. We spent Monday and Tuesday hanging out in my hotel that I was staying in until I went back to my family for a couple of weeks. The other night, she was being very vague with texting when she originally was supposed to come over. She came much later than expected, and I knew something was up. She basically unloaded on me how I was abusive, controlling, overly demanding, and unsupportive. It took me 5 seconds to figure out she was repeating verbatim some sort of rehearsed speech from her parents. And to be honest, I was so agitated at this point, despite making a huge gamble on her, I decided to be a prick about it. I asked her if her family told her to say this. She said they suggested it to her, but she came up with it herself. I asked her to explain in detail what I did. She said I was living like a parasite off her. I reminded her that I'm paying 50-50 for her mortgage, 50-50 for utilities and groceries as well. I have my own car I pay for, a job that makes just about as much as hers, unlike her leech parents who demand payments on the weekly and raid the kitchen on the weekends. I told her to try again with something better. She looked flustered and said I was trying to isolate her. I kind of smirked like a jackass and told her that I have always supported her many friendships that she has destroyed on her own because no one wants to deal with her family or be used as a shield like me. I was practically demanding to know at this point why she is so hell-bent on destroying her life for these people. She just kind of shouted that I don't understand her family and she's just trying to earn their love back and was basically ranting at that point. It's just so staggering to see up close. I have ventured into a few subreddits to get perspectives, and if you have any familiarity with them, you'll see how people who are victims of abuse by their own family can be so utterly broken by it that it'll wreck their brain to where they truly believe they are the problem and they deserve the abuse. Well, that's how she was. She was utterly broken and didn't want help. She didn't want to get better, she just wanted to get worse. It hit me like a truck, honestly, the realization. I really did feel like a fool for trying, even if it was what I was supposed to do in the first place. She was practically berserk at this point, and I was just mentally exhausted and needed her to leave before someone called the police. She finally left, but I had a few concerned neighbors check on me. Some of her friends are aware as they have messaged me checking on the situation. I told them the truth and that I just needed to be alone to think what to do next right now. They have revealed that she has given them similar rants after they expressed concern for her. One had even heard that she may be possibly at risk of losing her job. She is definitely having some sort of mental break. From my understanding, she is now completely isolated. She is actually sprinting into a horrible, lonely life right now. There's nothing I can do for her at this point, and as selfish as it sounds, I'm just glad it's going to be behind me. After another 3 days, OP gave us one more update. Things have kind of wrapped up, but there were some loose ends. I completely forgot to change my mailing address, which I should have done ASAP, so a couple of important things got sent to her house. I had to go pick them up, plus a final couple of items I want for my move that I left there and decided I wanted to actually take. She was being difficult and not responding to messages in regards to them, so I had to go get them from her myself. I brought a mutual friend just in case. Thankfully, she was at least cooperative in letting me get my stuff, and it wasn't much of an issue. Everything else was, though, she had a lot of nasty things to say, telling me she was already sleeping around, telling me how happy she was now that I was gone, telling me she's finally free of me, how she's going to be so much better off without me. A lot of generic insults and horrible things you would commonly expect from a nasty breakup. And you know what? It was so fucking obvious it was a rehearsed script from her family, and you could easily see how miserable she was. She looked like a mess, like she hasn't slept in days. The house was a mess. She wasn't even yelling it. She sounded so exhausted and broken when she said it. She didn't even smile when she said anything. Just a face contorted in hate and anger. She was not the woman I knew anymore. That person was gone. When I was getting ready to leave, she was still going on. I was fed up and told her something along the lines of, "Congratulations, your friends are gone. Your human shields are gone. Your engagement is over. Your support is gone. Anyone who ever treated you like a decent human being is gone. It's just you and your family. I hope you're happy while they bleed you dry." It probably didn't go like that, but something like it. She just stood there, literally just stood there and looked at me with indifference and walked away as I walked out the door. As we were leaving the mutual friend, Tiffany asked if I was okay. I reassured her I was, and I'm just trying to get myself set up to go home next week. She also confirmed that she hears my ex did lose her job for not showing up for several days and basically ghosting them. They're going to try an intervention next week and asked if I could participate, but I'm not delaying my travel because frankly, I just want a clean break. I know for a fact that if I stay involved, I'm only going to be witnessing the slow descent to either a full break or a suicide I just can't do that. Despite all this, I'm actually excited for the future, and I have realized that I ignored way too many red flags at the beginning. Even with everything that happened, I know I'll be doing good and I'm gonna be alright. I expect this to be my final update. I'm still in town until Sunday afternoon, so something could happen while I'm still here, but if anything does, it won't be exciting. The final update came a little over 1 week later. I'm currently back in my home state with family, refamiliarizing myself with the area. I have 100% decided to stay here permanently and am starting the long process of looking up homes in the area. I've been doing great and hanging out with friends and family. A couple of mutuals with my ex-fiancée have let me know what's been happening, and things finally seem to be getting better. The plan was for an intervention Sunday, but Saturday night after her family visited again, she called friends in an absolute manic state, and it finally seems to have clicked how badly she screwed up. It was a full-blown panic attack and meltdown, which ended with her in the ER. Needless to say, she finally admits how miserable she is and that she's messed up her life badly. Apparently, she tried calling me, but I blocked her. She still has her job, and that info about her losing it was wrong, but she's hanging by a thread there, and her boss has basically ordered her to use her PTO for a few weeks to get her head on straight. She's a valuable asset there, and they are trying to make sure she can fix herself before they pull the plug on her. Her friend group is extremely close. My ex was someone who is a very helpful and supportive friend, so it makes sense her group is going this far in trying to help her. It is, however, an unspoken agreement that if she goes back to how she was again, they are all prepared to let her sink on her own. She's doing as well as can be expected. Her family has continued to harass her with calls and messages. They've tried showing up to her house, but have been firmly redirected by friends and even neighbors. I hope she truly understands the kind of support system she has. As trashy shitshow family disputes usually go, her parents and brothers have taken it to Facebook, which from what I heard has been in my ex's favor as it has exposed their behavior to many more people and seems to have shut them up for a little. Finally, she had one of the mutuals pass a message to me. Essentially, it was her admitting all the horrible things she said to me were not true and were done by her family, as I knew they were. She apologized for how things ended and hoped we could one day reconnect. Sadly, I had to relay that we need to stay separated for good and she just needs to focus on her healing, but I told her I still care for her and I wish her the best, but this needs to be our goodbye. The message seems to have been passed along and her friends are helping her process that. She's got a long way to go, but I hope she can find her peace as I am finding mine. User Peter09 said, "Good for OP for not being stuck in this miserable marriage. I'm hoping for ex-fiancé to get the help she needs because she really needs it. As for the family, they can go rot." Under this comment, user Amalora said, "I am happy that the ex started to actually understand her situation, and I'm happy for her that she had so many good friends. I am also happy that OP understood that there was no going back. Just because you did what's broken doesn't mean the cracks aren't there. And I fear that if he had taken her back, she would have drifted back to her family. With him gone, she had tangible, lasting consequences to look back on whenever she thinks about reuniting with her family." User Comprehensive Bad 219 said OP definitely made the right choice, moving to be near his family and staying firm that they will not be getting back together. I'm also glad his ex seems to be coming to her senses. Hopefully this will be the final time and she won't allow herself to be sucked back in by her family. I felt quite sad for her reading how much they had torn and broken her down. As much as she has a support system with her friend group, if she could somehow read this, I would tell her to follow OP's lead and put some physical distance between her family and herself. Just give herself a fresh start somewhere new where they can't constantly stalk and harass her. User Actually Parsley said, "I really hope she manages to keep from falling back into her family, but I'm glad that OP left. I actually think it'll be the best for her too. I think that the very best outcome for her would be to heal on her own, with support from those friends, and then find someone and be able to start a relationship that wouldn't have the scars of what she did and said to her partner because of her family." User Madam Mary said, "Sad, but OP needs to look out for himself. Glad to see he's finding what he deserves. I think he was an unwilling enabler by acting like her human shield. Unfortunately, even if they got back together, the prior dynamic would have been hard to change." Honestly, what her group of friends is doing is exceptional. God knows I wouldn't be one of those friends, to be honest, but it doesn't seem it comes from within her. All I see is a jellyfish spine, back then acting how her parents and siblings wanted, and now what her friends want. Let's hope that change she is trying to make goes along with a good therapist. It's almost cult-like attachment to her family of origin. Let's wish her all the good luck in the world, and also to OP, free from that shit show. Let's hope he thrives.